For those that haven't met me either in person or via a digital form last week, I'm the new Coach Education Manager here at Football South Australia. And I think I agree what Matt said, this format worked really well for us last week. So it's something we're going to continue. I really want to engage with the coaching community while we're all isolated, and that's why Matt and myself are doing this from home tonight as opposed to last week when we were in the office. So look, just want to give you a quick overview about what we're going to talk through tonight. So I'm going to kick things off shortly by going over and showing how video analysis can be used in line with the coaching process and aligned to the match and training phase throughout your week. So set some groundwork for what we can use video analysis for, because it needs to almost drive everything we do as a coach match to match. I'll then open up to Ben Bate, who was a technical analyst at New Saints in the Welsh Premier League and was involved in a number of Champions League and Europa League qualifiers. And he'll talk to you how video analysis was a key part of their system. And then to end the workshop tonight, we've got Shane from Huddle, who's come on board and has been really, really helpful and really positive about putting the workshop on tonight. And here we're going to give you an overview to the product that they have and potentially how it can be used to engage players. Seems we can't have training contact with them at the moment. So yeah, really want to try and give coaches at the moment a way to continue to interact with your players during our shutdown period. So while we're presenting tonight, if you've got questions, please feel free to type them in the chat box, either during the presentation or at the end of one of the speakers. And we'll open up afterwards to have your questions to our presenters tonight, to fill you in on any questions that you've got if you want to hear anything in more detail. And then at the end of the workshop, we'll talk about where we go from here, because as we alluded to before, we'd like to make this a weekly occurrence. So, yeah. So let's kick things off. So just give me a second to just pull this up. So as I alluded to before, everything is going to be about how we use video analysis, how we use to identify football problems to drive our coaching process. So hopefully, can you just give me a thumbs up, or someone just put in the chat box, hopefully you can see the presentation on screen. If someone could just let me know. So first thing that I want to reference tonight is our coach expertise model. So many of you would have seen it before. So we have our vision and philosophy at the top, and that's going to drive everything that we do with our teams and training in the match. And that's underpinned by our football knowledge as a coach. And that's something that's always evolving. And then you've got your three pillars, your match in the center, because that's what we're preparing for, or that's what we're reviewing. Then you've got your link with training, so how you prepare for the match, and then you've got your management. And so tonight we're really going to focus on the training and on the match. And I suppose a little bit will come into the management about how you manage with your staff. So we're going to look at your structure to how to analyse an opposition. We'll look at that, how that drives training, how that will dictate what you do on the training park. We'll look at how if you have got the resources, you can actually use video analysis to drive your halftime team talks, to get live clips to show your players clips in the halftime break. Then all of it is to increase your team's performance, especially those coaches who are working in the performance phase. How can you make sure week in, week out, your team are putting in performances that's going to get you 3 points? If you're in the game training phase, performance will mean something else. How do you make sure your team, you're able to implement and bring your model to life week in, week out? Before we continue, just a little bit of a disclaimer. I know that people in the chat tonight, we're going to have people who have different environments. Some of you may be coaches who work by themselves. Some of you may have assistants. Some of you may have multiple assistants, and somebody is a technical analyst. So I think the key tonight is when we present this information, it's your job as a coach to take this away and to work out what you're going to try, what you're going to implement in your own specific environment. Because we all work differently. And so take the information and apply it to your context. Everything we'll start with, we're going to start with the vision and philosophy. So you'll have your own, and up on the screen at the moment we have FFAs. So this is how the team's going to play, how you're going to be effective in each moment of the match. So you have your weekly schedule. So that could be from your game on a Saturday or Sunday to how you work through to the following week. And you've got your match, your post-match, your training phase, and your pre-match, which video analysis can be used in all of them. So you play your match, you may code for half time, but if you've got video analysis software, you're definitely going to have videos, have clips that you can share with your coaching staff and share with your players. So potentially game day +1. Now you're in on the Monday. Here you can maybe analyze your own performance of your past match, but you can also start analyzing the opponents that are coming up. And this is where you might want to focus on ball possession. That will lead you into Tuesday. So if you're focused on the opponent's ball possession, you're going to try and train BPO. How will you combat the opposition's key principles? And then this is where you can start working with the opponent's shape. You've analysed them on the Monday. You can now bring into action on the training pitch how they play. Wednesday, you can continue the analysis of the opponent BPO. And you can start introducing your training and with your football conditioning model. Thursday, if you've analysed the opponent the day before, you can then work on your ball possession and then make sure you're working against the opponent's BPO shape. Now, here's the key. Are you the coach that delivers the session on the Thursday and then doesn't have too much contact between the players between now and the match? Or are you the coach that's going to go and analyse your own performance by watching your training videos, especially your training game? Can you analyse to see what players are taking on board and see what they're actually, or maybe what they're not? Do you send out a match pack? If you do, how can you include clips of the match, potentially the opposition, into that and how you'll counter? And then Saturday's an off, and then Sunday's going to come in, and that's where your match, you can go back to your playing your match and potentially drive with video analysis to drive your halftime team talks, to show live clips of the action at halftime. We're going to do a look at the opposition analysis to give you a framework how you can analyse a team that's either played against or a team that's coming up. So we're going to look at the post-match and how the post-match, how that drives training. When we analyse, many will be familiar with this, but we're going to watch around the 4 main movements. Analyse the opposition about how they're in ball possession, how they create and how they score goals, how they transition from BP to BPO, and then how potentially they're going to counter the counter. You look at how they're set up out of position. So how do they prevent goals? How can you exploit that? Then you'll be last of all looking at how they transition when they've won the ball back into BP and how they're going to counter-attack you. And can you find ways to exploit them, or can you find ways for them to stop hurting you? Here's some good things to look for. So look how they press. Do they press? If so, how? Do they force the centre-back to play into a full-back and then try to lock you against the line to create a defensive overload against the full-back, or force you down the line into the winger? Do they press and force the fullback to play inside, and they're going to try and step to win the ball in central areas? Yeah. If they defend deep, how do they do it? How does their block operate? Again, is it forcing play centrally, or is it forcing play outside to create a defensive overload against the line? And where are any weaknesses? So while you're analysing them and watching clips and putting clips together, this is what you can be looking at. So how do we build up against their press? How do we build out? How do we create goal-scoring chances? How do we release somebody in behind their defensive block? And then if there are weaknesses, how can we exploit those? In transition, yeah. If they've won the ball back, either from deep or from pressing from the front, how do they transition into attack? So again, you can come up, find out how they do it. How can you counter their counter-attack or their fast breaks? Look at, analyse the opponent in ball possession. How do they build out? Do they play around and through, or do they play over? Once they get into the attacking half, how do they look to release players in behind a defensive unit? And how do they create goal scoring opportunities? So here, how will you press them? Will you press them differently to maybe the previous opposition, given how they set up? And then how will you stop them? How will you defend in your own defensive half? Will you defend as a deep block, or will you employ a mid block? These are some of the questions you can be using when you're putting clips together. And how will they counter the counter? So how do they transition into defence, loss of possession? Is there opportunities for you to hurt them quickly? Are they disorganised? Are there moments of disorganised? Are there people and players within units that don't transition quickly that you can hurt on transition? And maybe there's a couple of other factors that you want to consider. So how do they deliver their set pieces? And do they have any special players that have the potential to hurt you? Can you put dossiers together, show players clips of either how they deliver in swinging corners, out swinging corners, free kicks, or any players that are likely to cause you trouble or potentially hurt you? And then you can come up with opportunities and strategies how you limit their abilities. Once you've analysed, you can use that to drive your weekly training schedule. So many of you will be familiar with the coaching process, how coaches we shape our sessions and how we shape our weeks. So we want this driven by the analysis. So driven by the clips, driven by the coding. So how do you work as a coaching staff? Do you take the analysis and then you do discuss it as a group? Do you have an even discussion group? Is the head coach more involved? Is it led by the technical analyst? These are questions that you'll have to discuss and work out for your environment. But once you've got the analysis, you can use the analysis to drive your match plan, how you'll tackle the upcoming opposition and how you'll play against them, how to stop them hurting you, and how there's areas that you can exploit. Once you've got your match plan, again, use the analysis, use that match plan to drive your training plan for the week. Your sessions that are going to focus on BPO, BP, or either the transition moments. So your training plan is derived from how you want to action in the match in the weekend. Once you get into your session, whatever your key principle is that you want to focus on, potentially as the coach now, the head coach can manage the team that you're preparing for the weekend. And then potentially if you've got an assistant coach or assistant coaches, they can manage the opposition, so they can bring the opposition's playing style to life. And once we've delivered, I think the most crucial thing is how do you evaluate and how do you use video analysis to do this? Have they achieved the session objective? Is it objective that we definitely know we have examples of the players actioning what they need to do? Or is it, I think so, and I'm kind of hoping a little bit that enough is sunk in that it'll affect the performance on the weekend? Here's key, your post-training review. You can record your training, you can put it into your software, and you can analyze, and then you can reinforce any key aspects in a pre-match. So, can you review your training footage? If you can review your footage, you can watch, and especially in the training game, you can decide if your session objective has been achieved. You can watch, you can find out, are your players actioning their football actions correctly? Are they pressing correctly? Are they combining centrally or in wide areas correctly how you want to play against the opposition? Are they conducting, are they able to action the team task or player tasks? Now the question when you're watching the footage, is it yes, or is it I'm not sure, or is it there's players that still don't understand? Now if you know that your players are or they aren't, it will dictate then maybe what you do next. If you watch your training footage and you can see that some examples where players can't quite get the timing or can't quite action, now you have a chance to reinforce that information as opposed to going, I hope. Anytime I go, I hope they get it, potentially now you're opening yourself up for maybe not being able to execute the team how you want to play on the weekend. So, key is, are there messages that need to be reinforced to the whole group or individual players? You can do that potentially in a pre-game match pack. So you can send out an email to the team. You can put in the details about meeting times, about the physio, and you can upload videos to YouTube which the players can download and watch, which can reinforce some of the key messages that you want the players to take on board. You can name your starting lineup, and you can use clips from your analysis software to reinforce any key attacking or defending strategies or tactics. You can put multiple clips of your key principles, including what-if moments. So here you might share some clips of the opposition, and you'll be able to dictate through text or through spotlighting what you want players to do and how you want them to cope, to reinforce the training objectives from your sessions during the week. You can analyse and put clips on opposition set pieces, where they deliver, how they deliver, any variations that they use. That will lead you to a match day. So again, you've prepared them, you've worked on them, because you've analysed the opposition, you've analysed potentially in the last match day where teams have hurt you, you've prepared a training program off the analysis, you've reinforced through the pre-match some of the key match strategies and the key match tactics. Now you're prepared for match day. So if you've got the option, we know that a number of coaches will record games. So if you've got the capability, can you use video analysis software to identify clips that you can present to the players at halftime? Potentially things you can look for. Can you find clips on how the opposition are hurting you defensively? Yeah. Can you find clips on potential ways you are hurting the opposition or potential ways you can hurt them? Can you look around some of the key transitional moments? Once you've lost the ball, how you can get back into your shape quickly and stop them hurting you, or on winning the ball, maybe identifies areas where they're slow in transition that you may be able to hurt the opposition. And then any special moments that occur, anything that you see time and time again in the first half that you think you need to present for the players. Here's one thing that came in a season or two back that changed how we can operate as a coach. So now you are permitted to have a piece of technical equipment, whether it be a mobile, an iPad, an earpiece, even the smartwatch or laptops may be used on the bench. And you can have a team official in the grandstands, or on the scaffolding, liaising and talking directly with the coach. And that can be as simple as having your mobile phone connected and just being on a phone call for the first half. The things you can discuss. Is the opposition safe? Okay. Is it the same as you analysed? I've been in situations where you've been the coach, where you've seen 3 or 4 matches of the team previously that you're about to play, and you've worked out that they play a 3-5-2, but then all of a sudden they come out in the first half and they've gone back to a 4-2-3-1. If that happens, how can you quickly communicate that between the coaching staff to pass that message on to the players? Are they playing? Are there key principles in the 4 moments? Are they actioning the same things that you've seen in the analysis? Or are they doing something else? If they have changed, what's happened? How have your players adapted? And if there are problems developing, especially in the opening half, what are they? And can we quickly work on a solution to solve them? And this is where footage at halftime become key, because you can see real live clips as the game happened. And then you need to have a discussion about what things do you want to code? What things do you want the analysis or the assistant coach, what do you want to hone in on, and what do you want to present? Here's how you might work if you've got somebody recording the game and using software to create live clips. So just before halftime, in that final 5 minutes, that's where your assistant coach or your analyst may come back to the bench or come back to the dressing room and start collecting a group of clips that you're going to share with the coach. On halftime, as the head coach comes into the dressing room, now here's an opportunity to have a discussion. What are the key halftime messages and what key clips can we show to support that? There might be also some clips that individual players need to see. So before or potentially after the main halftime address, you can quickly show 1 or 2 individual players any key clips that they need. At halftime, once you're delivering your main message by the head coach, the assistant coach or the analyst can use either a computer or a projector in your dressing room to put the clips and play the clips so that the coach can talk to the clip as it's happening, to give the players the live match picture, which is always going to be better than using a tactics board. And then as the halftime window comes to an end, you can make a decision. Does the assistant coach go back into the grandstand or onto the scaffolding and keep the communication and keep live coding, or do they return to the bench and sit and discuss with the coach and watch from that perspective, and then code the second half at a later date? But again, this process is all going to be dictated by what staff you have, yeah, and how you're going to operate in your environment. So when you're watching a match or you're using the software post-match, here's a couple of things, 2 key questions that I'd recommend you ask yourself when you're watching the clips or putting clips together. Maybe the first one relates to your vision and philosophy. What do you do well? Yeah, and what does the match tell us? How we executed our vision and philosophy. So you have a way you want to play, and in the match, how well did you execute that? What worked? What really exploited the opposition? So you're going to analyze your own performance. And then the second one is, where did we get hurt? That's, what did the opposition prevent? What parts of our vision and philosophy did they prevent coming to life? So you've got your vision and philosophy and you've tried to action it. Maybe the opposition have stopped you somehow, found a way to exploit you, or found a way to shut you down. And now you've got to look back to your football knowledge. You've got to look at what the opposition coming up are doing and how you can use your knowledge to solve your football problems. Your knowledge then will guide what your training plan looks like and what you're going to work on in your 2 or 3 sessions where you're going to work tactically, and you're going to divide your training, help implement in the match, and it's going to be guided again by your vision and philosophy. What I'll do is now close the presentation. If anybody's got a couple of questions, more than happy to answer, but I'd like to get into the next 2 presentations, as they're going to expand really on what maybe one way that a club and a coach has used video analysis, and then let you talk to the expert, Shane, who this is what he does. He liaises with different sporting organisations across Australia and sets up their video analysis software for them. So hopefully,
Alec, there's one question that came through from Jean. Actually, Paul, if you can hear, you might even be able to answer this. Are there any restrictions on age groups? So are there restrictions on if a coach can film like minors or juniors for internal coaching purposes?
I think one of the things, especially when if we're talking junior players, and I'm talking when I say 13 and under, I think you'd need parents' permission and players' permission, and you'd have to check working with children guidelines for that one. Maybe that's something we can research a little bit more post-course and put something out there around the specific guidelines, because it's not something that I know off the top of my head. So again, if you're most of what I've talked through tonight was probably working in the game training phase and the performance phase. So you're looking at youth and adult players, but it's something we can look, and when we upload the videos to our social media platforms, we can probably put an answer together on that one, if that's okay.
And following from that, Andrew says, if you can't use video, would you use annotations on a whiteboard if you can't use the video? If you don't, or what could you recommend to use?
Yeah, I think if you can get access to video, that's going to be the most powerful tool that you can show your players. But that's going to take, there's a little bit of technology that you need. You need obviously a camera that can download straight into your computer, into your video analysis software, and then you're going to need a projector or TV screen in your dressing room. So that might be, if you have that, you might be able to control that at home games, but that might be different on away games. But if you can get live clips of action from the first half, it's always going to be more powerful. Again, if you're at the away game or you don't have access to that, you have to provide the players a picture, and a tactics board is going to be the best way to do that. So you animate the picture as you explain it in the dressing room. Yeah. But video is always more powerful than static pictures. but I know there's some challenges around technology. So,
Technology,
find out what you can do.
Yeah, also like elevation as well. I know the media space for some NPL games, elevation is sometimes a bit of a challenge as well. So there are definitely some challenges for coaches.
Yeah, and it's about, there's always going to be challenges. There's challenges, whatever level of the game you're at. It's about how do you get around that challenges, or how do you find a new way of doing something, which is something we're having to do at the moment because we're all now online, because we've got a challenge where we can't get together with our players or with a group of coaches. So, yeah, give it a go and find a way if you can.
Okay, has anyone got any more questions before Alec introduces the next part of the evening? I think we're good, Alec.
Okay.
Over to you, mate.
All right, so what I'll do is we'll introduce you to Ben Bate. So Ben Bate was the video analyst from 2010 to 2015 at the New Saints in the Welsh Premier League. He also was involved with the Welsh Football Association. Was the video analysis, starting with the under-15s and then working his way through the 17s all the way through to the senior side. I actually worked the last couple of years. Ben was a colleague and we worked together on a number of different workshops as he was a technical director at one of the clubs from the region I was from. And he also has worked for New Zealand Football and in 2015 was part of the under-20 Football World Cup. So the New Zealand team competed in that. And then is also involved in 2016 with the under-17 girls who went through to the World Cup. So he's someone who's operated at a high level and yeah, really, really good and a really eye-opening presentation and how to use video analysis software and really tangent into how we do it now where we don't have access to players. So what I'd like to do is throw you to Ben and if you can go through your things.
Hi all, thanks Alec for the introduction and thanks for having me along this evening. So I'm just going to present a little bit on the work I did around about 10 years ago when I was working as a video analyst back in Wales with the New Saints FC. Predominantly what we're looking at is improving individual and team decision making using video feedback. So just as a bit of background, I was at university back in North Wales in 2010. And as part of that, I had to do a research or dissertation thesis, and I chose to go into using video analysis. And as part of that, I looked to engage with a local sports club, and as football was my sport. I looked to engage with a number of clubs in my local area. Unfortunately, very few of them came back, but the New Saints did. And yeah, I didn't know a lot about the New Saints when I first went into it. They played in the Welsh Premier League, which even as someone who lived 20 minutes away from the club, I had never been to a game. I didn't really know the league existed, to be honest with you. So yeah, very, very minor in terms of football, especially in world football and European football. But presented with a great opportunity for myself. So they were actually a full-time club, and they still remain full-time to this day. So they build a business model around being full-time, but also winning the league year on year. The rest of the league was predominantly amateur or semi-professional. And as a result of winning that, they got into the Champions League qualifiers. So the Champions League qualifiers accessed a little bit of money, which enabled them to sustain the professional status. But obviously, in order to do that, you have to win games. So with the time restrictions that are in place, which I'll go into in a little bit more detail in a minute, winning games was really, really important. And it wasn't a matter of winning games in middle of the season. We had to win games pretty much straight off the bat. As soon as we came back in, we were playing against teams that had considerable budgets, sizable budgets more than ours. So we had to hit the ground running pretty much straight away. Along with that, obviously, from season to season, contracts finish roughly end of May, and the season finishes. New players come in beginning of June. So we needed something to put in place whereby we could improve and integrate those players into our club as quickly as possible. Now, fortunately, we were pretty forward thinking. We had a number of staff who were actually involved with the technical department with the Football Association of Wales. So even from a very early status, we had an established playing model at the club, which is, although continually evolved, it has been at the club since mid 2000s. So they were quite ahead of their time in that instance. So yes, we did have a very established playing model that we could integrate players into from the get-go. And as we'll go into it again, a little bit time, we did have an extremely short turnaround time between starting training and competitive performance-related games. So what were the constraints? And as I said, time was the big one. So the first qualifying game this year, is just to give you a reference based on what this year, and hopefully this all happens based on what's happening at the minute. But the first qualifying game is due to occur on the 23rd of June. Now, the Welsh Premier League season ends in the second week of May. Typically, TNS, being the team that they are, would be in and around the Welsh Cup final, which would occur on that second week of May. The league typically finishes on that first week of May. So either way, there's not a huge amount of wiggle room there. And then obviously, end of a long season, the players have usually been in since the beginning of June or end of May. We need to try and give them some sort of some sort of pro-season break. So very difficult to do this and trying to figure it out around periodization and training times, etc. We need to give players a rest. We need to have them to go away and take time and do things non-football for a little while. But also we need to be mindful of the fact that the 2 weeks after the second week of May is the first week of June, which only gives us 20 odd days to get a team ready to be competitive and performance driven with a first qualifying game. Couple this with the fact that the transfer window opens on the 1st of June. So any new players that we have into the club, contracts end at the end of the season. Those players leave if they're not retained. Then any new players coming in, we only get access to them from the 1st of June. Therefore, extremely limited time with new players, but also, again, is getting those players playing together, training together, getting the coaches in front of them. Again, there's very, very, very short window of time there where we can get the players up to speed, and then get them all on the same page. So why did it matter? Ultimately, this is a big question. And as an analyst, it's very difficult to kind of prove efficacy in what you do. So ultimately, it came down to the Euros. It came down to the money. So as an example, prize money for winning the preliminary qualifying round. What people don't understand or people don't realize is it's actually 394,000 Aussie dollars. If you can win that game and get through to the next round, you're going to get another 480,000 Aussie. And on top of that, if you can get through to the second qualifying round, that's another 630,000 Australian dollars. So the cumulative prize money comes from a prize pot of 3.4 billion Aussie dollars, which is obviously all in euros. But yeah, that's where the money came. That's what the sort of money that you're involved in, and that sort of money can sustain a relatively decent sized staff and provide a good playing budget for a full-time club within the Welsh Premier League for 2 to 3 years. So you've only got to win 2 or 3 games, and you can set yourself up for a large period of time. In the year that I started in 2010. We actually managed to get through to the final qualifying round of the Europa League, as it is now. And that season in 2010 got us nearly £1 million in total prize money, cumulative prize money. And that doesn't include any TV revenue. We played Anderlecht and we played Levski Sofia that year of Belgium and Bulgaria, respectively. And there was also a sizable chunk of money that came in from TV revenue from those 4 games as well. So the money is massive involved in the game at that level. Even for a professional team that plays in a league that no one's heard of, the financial returns are substantial. But also the risk of not qualifying and not getting through to at least 1 or 2 rounds is that although there's a financial reserve, it does put your business model and your structure, your whole way of being in jeopardy pretty quickly. So what do we do? So I worked with the coaches to identify the areas of our playing model and also where the new players had come in. So that was really, really important as well, is sort of is focusing on those new players when they came in, and how to sort of maximize our time. We can only do so many sessions on the grass of them in the 2 or 3 weeks that we have prior to the sort of competitive game. So now it was about maximizing that time outside of our regular trainings, in order to integrate them as effectively as possible into the player model. So initially we focused on situations in possession. So this was predominantly because we were a very much possession-based team. We wanted to dominate the ball as best as possible, and especially in those earlier qualifying rounds when we were playing against teams that were of a similar standard to ourselves, it was possible to dominate possession with those games and obviously do what we wanted to do with the ball. Therefore, we felt that was the most important thing, was that the players understood, or we spent more time working on the players' understanding of possession with the ball than off the ball. And then we broke the game down into there. We broke the game down into 4 actions. So we kind of made it relatively simplistic, if you will, just to try and really nail down what we were looking at, but only in specific moments. So, for example, in this first year that we came in, we had a new fullback that had come into the squad. So he'd been playing professionally. He'd dropped out of the professional game in England and then moved into the professional game in Wales. He was a considerable asset. He was on a substantial amount of money, and he was a player that we felt was going to help us make a big difference both in the league but also in Europe. So fundamentally, we focused on the fullback area and receiving the ball within our defensive third as a fullback. So we then broke the game into those 4 actions. So the 4 actions were essentially, we were going to play the ball backwards back from where it came. We were going to play the ball inside, we were going to play the ball down the line, or we were going to dribble with the ball. So again, very simplistic, but we felt that based on our player model and based on the area of the pitch that we were looking at, we felt that those four actions were the key actions in that moment. And then we looked at training and games. So obviously initially we were doing a lot of training. So I'd film all of the training sessions and then look to identify those moments within the training sessions. And then when we started playing friendlies, we managed to get 2 or 3 friendlies in before the games would kick off. We're in the Champions League. Then we would break down the game. We'd find those key actions, and then we'd look to use them as part of the video analysis and feedback. So how did it work? So we created a decision sheet, which you see on the right. So what would happen is they would watch a clip of footage, and it would have a 12-second build-up. So we felt that 12 seconds would provide enough information for the players to be able to make a decision based on what they'd seen in that clip. So there was enough movement of the ball, movement of players, so you could gain an understanding roughly of what the actions would be of the players and the ball. When the player receives the ball, we would then pause the clip, and then it would be up to the individual player, and the whole team did this. So we wanted to make sure that everyone was integrated and understanding across the whole team. So we pause the footage, then every single player would then make a decision based on the clip that they've just seen. So they would pick one of the 4 and they'd tick their decision on that box. The head coach would then explain the correct answer relative to the playing model and also the why, so that the players had a better understanding of why they were doing these things as well. It wasn't just a matter of this is what you do and this is what you do and this is what you have to do. It was very much trying to empower the players and trying to get them to understand our thought process behind it as well, which we felt would definitely improve the buy-in as well. And then the clip was played through to see what actually occurred. So for a lot of the time, this was just to see whether or not what happened in the game had actually been relative to what we wanted to happen, so that the players could get an understanding of where they were at, I guess. But also, it was just good for the coach to be able to see as well reactions of players, and sometimes it was a bit of a laugh as well, because funny stuff happens from time to time in football, as we know. And 10 clips would be shown. So yeah, we'd find 10 clips in any given week. Sometimes we'd do this twice a week if we could. A lot of the time we'd just try and do it the once. But yeah, if we had the time, we'd do it twice a week to try and build up that understanding of where the players are at that point in time. So how did it work again? So the players, again, also had the opportunity to provide descriptions on what they'd seen. So in question 2 and question 10, there was also an opportunity to provide some written evidence of what their thought process was and why they'd made that decision. So this was really informative from my point of view as an analyst to sort of understand what their thought processes were, but also helped me massively for my dissertation because it provided a lot of qualitative data from the players around what their thought processes were and how they were coming to those decisions. So scores were then collated, and this gave each player an individual score. So again, this is relative to the coach's player model, or the club's player model. So you would get, each player would get a score from 1 to 10, 10 being absolutely in line with what the coach determined. Every answer is correct. 1 obviously being not so much. And then we would then look at these over the course of the preseason, including the European qualifiers. So the results from this, we did it up to the first game. We were able to do it 6 times within the first 4 or 5 weeks. And the improvement from test day 1, essentially, to test day 6 was significant statistically. They went from an average of around about 6 questions right to 8.5. There was a little bit of a dip at some point in the middle there as well. I think it was around around assessment 4. And we managed to relate this back to talking to players and some anecdotal evidence and some feedback from what they'd written as well, is that the players actually start to overthink as a result of spending a lot more time engaged in the process. But yeah, once we sort of addressed that and discussed it through with the coaching staff, we were able to sort of tweak it a little bit, and then the results went up again once the players stopped thinking so hard. So relating to the FFA coaching expertise model, obviously, it's directly, our vision and philosophy was very clear around our playing model. So really it was taken from the relatively limited time that we had in those trainings to be able to then take more opportunity outside of the structured training environment, minutes on the grass and all the rest of it, to then take it into the club rooms and be able to sit down with the players, spend more time with the players, talk them through, really make them understand. And then once we started getting into preseason games, a lot of them were able to pretty quickly see the benefit around the difference between integrating new players previously and integrating new players in that year. A lot of the anecdotal feedback was very, very positive around those new players being ready to go pretty much from the off. Due to spending more time looking at games, reviewing games, and then also the process that we undertook. So how am I using this now? So with the lockdown at the minute, it's actually provided a little bit of a window of opportunity. So typically in trainings and then on the normal time we'd spend with our players, we're kind of very focused on the team, I guess. We don't get as much time as I'm sure we'd all like to spend time with players individually and sitting them down and going through detail around their role responsibility within the team model. So really this has provided a great opportunity to engage with those individual players. So whether it's through video footage or through conversations as a result of that video footage, spending a lot of time providing feedback based on the videos that we've managed to get through preseason so far, which has proved incredibly valuable. So predominantly we've been focusing on the individual's game, but within our team player model. So again, trying to really take advantage of this time when we're in a situation whereby we don't know when we're going to be back to training again, and we don't know what the sort of gap between beginning training and also starting games. And also, it's difficult to gauge what the sort of retention of information will be through our existing preseason. We'd already been in preseason for 4 or 5 weeks. So, we want to try and make sure that we harness that and so that when we hit the ground running and the season starts up again, we're ready to go. Whereas instead of starting back at 0 point again and having to build that up, but whilst competitive games are occurring. So obviously there's different methods, but luckily for me as a former video analyst, I'm always going to think that video is the key. So I'm going about this really in two ways. So there's a player-led approach and a coach-led approach. So the player-led approach is very much around sending players footage of their own games or of our own games, so that they can then review those games relative to our playing model, and provide me feedback or ask questions around their individual role within the team and how it's worked for them and what they've seen. Any questions, and really to provide some detailed feedback around any questions that they do have. The coach-led approach is very much me sending out footage of sort of best practice, so opportunities elements of our game that we've seen in preseason, which are best practice. We can send out and sort of show, well, this is what we do, and this is how we want to do it. But also of sort of professional entities or professional clubs that are playing a similar playing model to ourselves, that is close enough that we can send clips of those teams performing actions that is also relative to our playing model. So yeah, that's just a couple of ways that I'm currently utilizing Huddle especially, but also video analysis as a whole. So thank you very much, guys. I appreciate you taking the time to listen to me talk about something that happened a long time ago and how I'm still utilizing it today. I'll hand back to Alec, and then, yeah, if you've got any questions, please feel free to ask.
Thanks, Ben. And it's, yeah, I guess when you're in a club situation like that, where you've got very short preparation time, and it's really the financial viability of the club, you've got to find every way you can to get the most out of your players. So what we'd like to do, if people have questions, please use the chat function to put your questions in. I've got a couple to start, Ben. So I've got three, and then we'll open up to some of them that are coming in, if that's good, okay with you.
Yep.
Yeah. So the first one is, when you started, obviously coming in, installing the video analysis software and looking at individual player clips, how did the players initially react?
So we're talking about 10 years ago when I initially started, and for a lot of the players, they'd never engaged with video analysis at all. So it was a bit of an aging squad when I arrived. So yeah, the transition moved into use of technology hadn't really occurred yet for a lot of those players, and even the sort of younger boys involved hadn't had any great exposure to it. That changed in the period that I was at the club, because a lot of clubs, especially in academies where the players were getting released from, had started to use video analysis in a really big way. So initially there was a small amount of pushback, just because it's something that they hadn't done before. And therefore they couldn't really see the value in it initially. But it probably took until the second preseason, I would say, until everyone was 100% behind it, as in from the captain, the oldest player in the group, pretty much down to the new players. Probably did take a full year of using it week in, week out, for them to really appreciate it and really see the benefit in the end. Cool.
So you've also, as well as working in club football, you've been involved in a number of international campaigns, whether it be with the Welsh Football Association, and attended with New Zealand football 2 age group World Cups. So have you used a similar approach? Because obviously when you're into camp, when you're in World Cups, there's very, again, limited amount of time on the pitch between games. Have you used something similar in those environments as well?
Yeah, so not an identical model, but I did something as well with my masters, which was a similar concept, but a little bit more of a different approach. We looked at more of like looking at working with units and groups of players rather than working with individual players, which this particular methodology was focused around. So yeah, we've utilized that. I know for the 17s World Cup with the girls in 2016, yeah, we built up a little library of clips and use them to help reinforce what we were doing relative to the playing model, and also with the 20s in 2015 as well. Similar sort of process through that. Again, we had a relatively decent build up into that, but prior to, there was a couple of structural changes in the staffing. So the play model just changed slightly. So we had to go through a pretty radical shift in players' thought processes in a short window. So again, we utilised a very similar model to try and embed that.
Yeah. And just one more before I open it up to our coaching network here. So you touched on it towards the end of your presentation about, obviously you've got a group of players that you've been working with now in the pre-season phase, and then your season's been put on hold. So what have you been doing, and how have you been using video analysis during this shutdown period of training?
Yeah, so I kind of touched on it a little bit at the end of the presentation there, but yeah, in two ways really. The first one is very much sending out the preseason games that we'd already filmed, sending them out to the players along with our playing model, and basically getting them to assess their own game against our playing model, if that makes sense. And then from that, generating questions from their point of view. So where they've got queries and where they've got questions, they can then come to me. And then luckily we do have the benefit of time at the moment where, we can spend a considerable amount of time and energy, sort of sitting down with individuals and talking to them using systems like this. The other way, again, is me finding good examples. So either within preseason, which as you'll find a couple of good clips in preseason, but you're not going to find a whole heap yet because you're still working on embedding those things. So then it's looking at professional clubs or clubs that we can get footage of from around the world that play with a similar player model or with elements of our play model that we can then clip and then send out to the players to show them best practice examples as well.
Cool. All right, well, we've got a few questions come in. So here's one from Nick. He just asked, what influences your decision to choose the moment when the fullback had possession and as the action moments to base your analysis on? So what led you to the clips that you played or selected?
Yeah, so like I say, initially the reason why we selected that specific action was a new player. So we had a new player. He played at a relatively decent level in England, but a very different playing style. So he wasn't kind of used to the way we played the game. So as a result, that was the main focus for picking that particular area. And again, because he was a reasonable investment from the club's perspective as well. So it was something that the chairman, as all good chairmen do, wanted to see a return on that investment pretty quickly if he could. So that was the main reason and rationale behind picking that particular moment. With regard to the actual action moment of when we stopped the clip or why we selected a particular clip, it was either that player or the previous player from the year before, or other individuals who were playing in the friendlies and trainings, was either making the incorrect decision initially, and then eventually that was just moved towards then just making, when they received the ball, and then making a decision. Because as we sort of progressed through preseason, the correct decision was made more often than not. So then it was more about just making sure everyone understood, not just the player on the ball, but also the rest of the team as well.
Okay. And then a question from Ken. Did you base the feedback on a specific communication model? So was there a model that you framed your communication around and how you fed back to players?
I'm not sure on the specifics of what a communication model would be, but Ken, can you elaborate on that at all?
Fine. So.
Hi, Ken.
Well, we'll give this a go. Ken, if you can, I've just unmiked your microphone, Ken. Did you want to elaborate on your question?
Well, no, it was more of the process of going through with the different players. So obviously, you deal with different personalities, and in your video analysis and your game model is very specific. So I'm just thinking if there was a certain process you were using, or a model of communicating with that.
Yeah. So the way we did it in this particular instance was it was in a group setting. So all of the players were involved, and then with the coaching staff as well. So a lot of players initially, to be honest, copied each other. So we had to employ a little bit of social distancing, even back in 2010. because kids, players, sometimes they behave in interesting ways. So yes, when we first did the sort of the pilot, before we started the initial, before we actually applied it towards a more of a study-based piece of research, we found that there was a lot of cheating going on, essentially a lot of copying, and everyone was just copying the neighbor. So yeah, we did have everyone involved, but we kind of had to spread people out. We didn't specifically, look to highlight anything other than what we were doing, if that makes sense. We tried to make it pretty clear. It wasn't about pulling people up and putting them over the coals. It wasn't about, the coach bullying people out or anything like that. It was very much about the whole team getting better and improving as a group. Predominantly group-based work. In the second year, we kind of changed that a little bit, and we did look at more specific groups. So we'd look at centre backs, fullbacks, midfielders, etc. So we break those groups down into even smaller modules as well. So we were able to spend a little bit more time with individuals, but obviously from a coaching perspective, that also takes a lot more time as well.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
No worries.
So a question here from Neowen. It's a little bit, I'm going to open it up to you, Ben, because you're also the TD at the club that you work for, and you'll be able to answer this one. So it's not quite on video analysis, but it's what age does your team playing model start? So if you just explain how it operates in the club that you're involved with.
So for us, it starts from 9s, so from under 9. So our club-based playing model goes 11v11, 9v9, 7v7. But it all filters towards that 11v11 at the end of the day. So yeah, the teams do adhere to the playing model from 9th grade. So in your skill acquisition phase, are you focused on the core skills, and it's the football actions that support your model? Yes. And then do you support them with video analysis, or is that something that maybe you've not tried to use? It's something we're looking to do this year. We've done it in a bit of a pilot or trial last year with one of the groups, which worked reasonably well. But again, that's more about just building on the work that's occurring in the skill act phase, really, and sort of giving them more of a conceptual understanding of playing styles around it, if that makes sense. We don't focus a whole lot on the playing model in that age grade, but there is one that the coach does work towards. So if you were doing it in the skill acquisition model, and maybe talk about the pilot that you've just mentioned, how does that differ what you look at compared to if you're working with a youth team in the game training phase or your first team in the performance phase? So definitely a lot more on the individual action. So far more interested in what the individuals are doing rather than the team. So obviously, we try and get them to play within that team model, but far more interested in what the individuals are actually doing and executing, and looking more at their PD&E in the game and using video for feedback to sort of improve that as much as we can. Okay. All right. If people have any other questions, please feel free to keep typing away. And if there's something that comes in later on, there'll be an opportunity to ask any more questions that might pop up in the next 20 minutes or so. So thanks, Ben, and thanks for that. And we'll maybe catch up with you for a few questions at the end. Yes. So what I'd like to do now is introduce you to Shane from Huddle. So Shane is the account manager for football. We're also looks after rugby and hockey across Australia. And from the concept when I spoke to Shane, roughly about 7 or 8 days ago, has been fantastic to deal with, and has been fantastic to come on board and to share what they're doing and share how they can help coaches. So what I'd like to do is throw you over to Shane, and he's going to present on how you can use their software, how it works, and how you can use it at the moment, given that we're all in a suspension from training. So please take it away, Shane.
Hi guys, thanks so much for coming. My name is Shane Hooley. I'm account executive for Huddle, which is a video analysis who provide video analysis tools to clubs and national sporting bodies all around Australia and indeed the wider world. I want to talk to you today a little bit about video analysis and how it can help help us to coach and stay connected during this period of isolation. Our mission at Huddle is that we help teams and athletes win. This was our mission before this crisis occurred, and it will remain our mission during this crisis. Being an online video analysis provider, we see this as obviously a terrible situation, but it's an opportunity for coaches and players to really challenge themselves and look at means of staying connected during this tough time. There are a number of issues that you're probably trying to overcome at the moment. These are just a couple of them directly related to coaching. I'm sure there are tens, if not hundreds of other issues that each of you are facing that we're not privy to and can't necessarily help with. But in terms of coaching and getting the most out of your players and taking this time to actually self-develop, it's really, really difficult to do without that face-to-face time with players that you're used to. You might have a lack of contact with them by other means as well, so you may be able to communicate with them by text message or email or some other form of chat. However, it can be really difficult to get your message across and to kind of learn using those forms of communication. And that last point there, I mean, it's just really, really difficult to provide education and coaching using those means, and that's kind of where the online element can come in and can help. Here's some stats that were taken probably a couple of years ago. I think 34 hours per week young people spend online these days, with 71% of those people saying that they spend 3+ hours watching videos online per day, and 3/4 of them seeking advice through YouTube channels. So if you're anything like me, you've probably watched hundreds of YouTube videos in order to learn how to do things, and it's actually a really, really effective way of doing things. Or if you play any individual team sports like golf, I'm sure if you had a lesson, you probably use video to learn. And with team sports like football, that's no different. We look at these stats, like I said, they were taken a couple of years ago, and you can probably extrapolate these and increase them significantly in the current climate, as we're all stuck inside and on our phones and laptops, probably more than we would care to be in our regular day-to-day lives. So I guess that, in a sense, that's your advantage, right? So every one of your staff and players will most likely have access to one, if not all, of the things shown on the screen here, apart from the camera down there in the bottom. But if you have a laptop, a tablet, an iPad, and a mobile device, and all of these are capable of connecting to the internet, and therefore uploading video and providing some coaching tools to your players and your staff. So I guess one thing you could be asking yourself throughout this time is, how do I stay one step ahead of the competition? You can use this period to your advantage. You can do some valuable work now that will help you to achieve future success. You can challenge yourself and your players to learn something new, whether that's video analysis if you haven't been doing it before. Perhaps it's a new platform if this is your first time using a platform like Huddle to do some analysis. If you have been doing some analysis, you can challenge yourself to do even more, to learn some new skills and think outside of the box in terms of what it means to actually utilize video analysis. Obviously, we've got the kind of standard stuff of recording and analyzing your own games, but you could use this time equally to grab footage of some teams who you aspire to be like. And so that's the final point there. You can use this time to reconfirm a playing philosophy if you have one. And if you don't have a playing philosophy, take this time now to decide what that could be. Find good examples of teams that do it really well and that you aspire to be like. Upload those and share them with the team. And use the intuitive drawing and commenting tools that Huddle provides in order to give that feedback in a way that makes sense to the young people we've already spoken about. Spend a lot of time on their mobile devices and watching videos in order to learn. So Huddle's always prided itself on being a really, really easy platform to use. So you can see here in this video, we've got drawing tools and also commenting tools down there at the bottom. Super simple to do, click and drag kind of system. You upload your video, you pull out key moments and you share those with the team. And like I mentioned before, this could be to do with your playing philosophy. Probably a really good time to actually try to reaffirm that, like we said, or it could be looking at things that individuals or the group has done well or not so well in the past. Not only can you do all of this analysis stuff on Huddle or online, but you can also put the onus back on the players as well. So this is a really good time to better understand how your players like to learn. Take that time, try to understand them a little bit better. Do they want to be given coaching points by the coach? Is that the way that they learn best? Or would they prefer that their learning be a little bit more self-driven? So if you want to put the onus back on them to create some clips and add comments and add drawings and then share that with you, then you can review it and then you can start a bit of a dialogue there and really drive some self-directed learning. And my suggestion, based on what I've seen and spoken to quite a few pro teams over the last week or 2 weeks, is that they are really trying to take advantage of this time to put the onus back on the players to get them to learn new skills in terms of cutting video, even tagging video and creating clips themselves, which they then share with the coach. The coach reviews, they can go back then and learn, and it's all self-directed. Of course, you need an element of the coach actually providing tips as well, but there's a nice balance there, and I think this is a really, really great opportunity for you to put the onus back on the players, like I've already said. You can keep your team in sync as well. So Huddle has inbuilt messaging tools, and I'll touch on this a little bit more when I show you the platform kind of towards the end. But it shouldn't be, or isn't necessarily just for your coaches and playing group. You can give access to the platform to your strength and conditioning staff, for example, if you have them. You can use messaging tools to upload PDFs, documents, send messages to the entire group, send videos of best practice in terms of technique for weight training, that kind of stuff. Thinking outside of the box even more, you could upload nutritional tips if you have those kind of things. You should give access to your technical director, who, if you've got videos of yourself coaching, you can upload the videos of your training sessions and get somebody, maybe a more senior coach, to analyze your performance as a coach during training. If you have access to that footage, this is a really great opportunity for you to develop as a coach as well. And Huddle has those tools built in, so you've got your messaging on top of all of the ability to upload video and to cut and create clips and all of that great stuff. And the last thing that I'll mention here, just before I jump into a demo of how to use the platform, I'm conscious of time, is that you can trade video with anybody else who's on Huddle. So whether that's a professional team that you have contacts with that you would like to get access to their video, if they're on Huddle, they can send it directly to you. If there's anyone else on this call who plays in your league who you'd like to share video with, you guys can share video with each other. There's a couple of ways to do it. You can send it directly to them with no strings attached, or you can say, I'll send it to you, you send it to me, and it sits in the middle until basically both teams choose to share it. Really great way of getting examples of the kind of video that you want your team to aspire to play, like I've already mentioned. That's it for the kind of first portion of this. I'm going to jump in now to the platform and give you a demo of the 4 key components that I think you should be looking to do in order to take advantage of this time, which is to add your team, to upload video, to review the video, and then to share the video. And yeah, we'll jump over to there now. All right. As I mentioned previously, there are 4 key components, in my opinion, to getting the most value out of this trial period that you're going to be on. So we want to first add all of our team members. So that's our players, all of our coaches, if we want them to have access. If we want our fitness professionals to have access, we can give them access as well. They'll have the ability to upload PDFs of training sessions, that kind of thing, training videos if they want to. If you have a nutritionist, technical directors, basically anybody. You can kind of think outside the box in terms of what content you want to upload. Obviously, the core of the platform is for analyzing video of your games or opposition games. So that's the first aspect. I'll show you how to do that now. So it's really, really simple. As with all things on Huddle, just come to this team section. I should mention at this point, before I go any further, that I will link support articles to all of these tutorials for all of you guys in a follow-up email. If you're ever looking for something and can't remember how to do it, you can just go to support.huddle.com. It'll bring you here and you can search, sorry, that might be huddle.com/support, sorry. And you can just search for anything. So for example, if I wanted to know how to upload video, you can come in here. It'll give me some suggested articles, or you can just search this term. For example, if I wanted to look at how to upload from a computer, which most of you will be doing during this climate, you'll get a video here of how to do that. It's a minute long, and then a step-by-step guide in terms with screenshots there as well for you to follow along. So the team management, if I come to this manage team section under the team drop down, there are 3 key ways in which we can add members to our account. Basically, I've added a few members here, as you can see, but it's all really simple. Just come up here to this very obvious blue button and hit add members. Like I mentioned, there are 3 ways to do it. The one that I always recommend, so that you know everything's getting done correctly, is to enter the names and email addresses of the people who you want to add manually. So I would come in here, type Shane Hooley, enter the email address, and select a role for that individual, whether it's a player, coach, or an admin. What will happen is they'll get sent an email invitation, and they'll just follow the steps in that email to gain access to the account. All of you who haven't previously had access to Huddle, I will go through this exact process in order to add you. So you'll go through the process of signing up that anybody else who you add will go through as well. That's enter manually. You can also, there's 2 other ways. You can send a team code. If you've got a WhatsApp group or a Facebook group or something, you can just send the team this link, which they can click on and enter this code to then fill in the details themselves. And they'll just fill in their own information, and then they'll have access to the account. Or the other thing that you can do is if you've got a CSV or an Excel file, you can just import that. So you can click on whether it's athletes, coaches, or admins that you're looking to import. It'll tell you which. You can download the spreadsheet template here, and you just fill in the relevant details and import it, and then it sends an email to them as if you'd entered it manually. Once you're done, then you'll have all your members will have access to the account. The second key then, so your account is set up. And you can do things like creating groups over here of your members. So you might have, your backs, mids, attackers, goalkeeping group, whatever else. Just makes it easier when we come to the next section of sharing, that you don't have to constantly select every single person that you want to share the videos with. But that brings me nicely into the next section, which is getting the video online. In terms of what kind of content, like I said before, the key content is going to be games that you've played in, but equally, you could have opposition footage if you're trying to analyze that, or you could also have footage of teams whose playing style you really admire. So be that Barcelona or Manchester City, Arsenal, whoever it might be. If you've got access to some of their footage, you can upload that to your account as well. Pull out clips of the style of play stuff that you want your team to emulate and share that with the group. In terms of getting video online, click on this upload button here from any page. It's always there. Select your files. And that video will start uploading once we've selected all of our files. So here I've got the full game in one single file, but equally you may have recorded in 2 halves. You can select both files here and you can rearrange them as necessary to make sure they're in the correct order. Hit upload. And then just let it do its thing. Fill in these details on the right-hand side here. There's 3 types of game video. If you're playing in the game, it's obviously a game. If it's a training session, it's practice. Or if it's a game that you've uploaded that doesn't involve you, then that's going to be scout footage. If you're playing in the game, it's a good idea to create a scheduled event. That just makes your library easier to filter later on. You can hit add schedule event here and then just follow the steps to do that. give the video a title, game upload, add any labels that you want. Again, these are just for filtering later. We can discuss that at a later date. Hit save and continue. You won't have this section, but once you're done, then just let it do its thing. It'll upload. It'll take some time, depending on how fast your internet speeds are and how big the file is. And once it's online, then it'll be ready to analyze. So that brings me nicely to the next section of the 4 key components here. So that's to analyze your video. Once your video has uploaded, it's going to live here in your video library. There'll be 2 key types of video in here. There'll be what we call game video, which is any games that you've uploaded or videos that you've uploaded. And then there are playlists, and playlists are like curated clips of key moments from one game or multiple games that you've compiled to share with individuals or the group. So if I click on any of these game videos now, it's going to bring me through, and you'll have your standard kind of video controllers in terms of play, pause, fast forward, rewind, that kind of stuff down at the bottom here. But you can watch through any video that you like and just watch it in its entirety if you please. But the real power of the platform starts to come when you actually want to break that down or pull out key moments to share. So if I come to any point of the video here, and there are 3 ways to create the clips of the key moments that you want. You can hit create clip here and it'll just pull out a 7-second clip for you. Or you can clip with a comment or clip with a drawing, and that'll do the same thing, except it'll give you the ability to add your comment on your drawing right now as you're creating the clip. You can always do this after if you want as well. So I'll show you an example of how that works. Basically, if I wanted to add a drawing at this point, I would hit create with comment, sorry. Add my comment, need to close down the space. Add a drawing, whatever I want to do. This is just me making it up on the spot here, but you get the idea. Hit save, and that has created 1 clip now, which I can then share later. If I come to another point that I find interesting as well, I can pause the video here, hit create clip. And like I said, that's going to pull out a 7-second clip. The video will keep playing, and I can keep creating these clips as we go. If I want to at any point come back and then edit these, I can click on that clip there, pause it if I want, extend the length of the start and the end time of that moment, and then also add comments and drawings, like I said, at a later date. So I can add my comment here, add a drawing, whatever it is I want to do. Save that, save the clip, and now I've got 3 clips or 5 clips or 10 clips or however many you've pulled out of the game that you want to share with the team. And then the last part of this process, really, that's quite powerful, is then to share this playlist to, like I said before, individuals or groups. What this does is it reduces the amount of time that the players or other members of your staff have to watch, rather than sending them a game video and saying, hey, sit down and watch this 90-minute game and tell me what you think. You can strip that right back to 5 or 10 or 15 key moments that might only total, 2 or 3 minutes worth of video, that then they can get a really condensed, personalized feedback from that game or multiple games. So we'll just hit here, share in a playlist, give the playlist a new name, and it can be game review round 1 versus whoever. Any playlist that you create by default is private to nobody can see it except for administrators on the team. So you can see here, Shane Hooley, that's me, and team admins can manage. But my team actually has no access to this video currently. My athletes, my coaches, they don't have any access. I can choose to change that from this drop down here. They can add comments and drawings, they can edit, they can manage it. Or I can decide these are my preset groups that I set up ahead of time. And I can also start typing in members' names here to share the video with. So Johnny, for example, maybe I want to share with Andrew, and I can send them a message, check out these clips, add some comments for review. What that'll do is it'll send them a notification on their phone and an email also. If they're on their phone, they can see the coach, Shane Hooley, has shared these clips with you, and it'll have this comment on there as well. Check out these clips, add some comments for review. They'll swipe to open on their phone. They'll see these clips. The video will get to the moment where I added my comments and drawings and automatically pause playback. You know, they can review those comments, those drawings. They can add their own information if they want. And then, you know, you've got some great interactive tools there to stay in connection with the team during this period of isolation. Once I hit save, that's going to ping a message to Johnny and Andrew now, and they're going to get that. They're going to be able to come in, like I said, and watch this review. I'll show you what that looks like from their point of view. When the video is playing back, it'll automatically get to that moment, like I said, where I added my comment and my drawing. They can then come in and they can say whatever they want, make up their own comment. If they decide to add their own drawing as well, they get allocated their own color. So you can start to build a bit of a dialogue here, you know, and you can see who's done what. That playlist now lives in my library here, so you can see it's here, game review, round 1 versus whoever. I've got my 3 clips there. Like I said, you can share that with whoever you want. If you didn't do it during the previous step, you can always do it later. So if I come in here and share, you can see me again, and team admins can manage, but also Andrew and Johnny have access. If I want to add anybody else at a later date, I can do that by just, again, typing their name or choosing from this list here. There are a whole bunch of other features available on huddle.com. You can use the messaging tool here to keep in contact with your team. That's where you can also upload all sorts of documents and things. So if you give access to your fitness coaches or whoever else from the club might want to upload documents, you can do that through there. You know, you can keep all of your communication in one place now, rather than jumping between WhatsApp, Facebook, Huddle. Everything can live together. And there are highlight tools here, which once we get back in season, anybody who's going to be using the platform will get automatically generated highlights for any game that we tag, as well as having the ability to add some cool effects over the video and share those on social media. You can exchange video with other teams in your league or with anybody else that uses Huddle without having to download and re-upload the video. And for anybody who does get games tagged by us, there's a report section here as well, which maybe is something for a later date. I can show you really briefly here. You get all sorts of stats, shot charts, trend reports, box scores, passing stats, all that kind of stuff. It's all in here. So there's my stats and my shot chart. Box scores with some passing stats will be in there as well. There's all sorts of stuff to go in and get your hands dirty with there. And everything in all of these charts is clickable and is linked to video. So for example, here, these free kicks, if I wanted to look at the 19, I would click on that number 19 and it'll bring me through to all of the free kicks for my opposition. Anytime we tag a game, we do both home and away teams. So regardless of who sends the game to us, we will tag both sides and you'll get back the full stats for both teams. So you can see not only how many shots you are having throughout the course of a season, for example, but you can also see how many you're conceding, regardless of who the opponent is. I'm monitoring the chat all this time, so anybody who has any questions, please flick them in there. I'll answer in the chat, but I'll also answer in more detail once we stop this recording. Thanks for watching. That was really quick. Like I said, there's tons more stuff to do that you can get your hands dirty with throughout the course, and I'll always be there to answer any questions, and you'll always have access to huddle.com/support, as I mentioned before. Cheers.
Thanks, Shane. So I've got a couple of questions to start off things, and then there's a few questions coming in. So first of all, I'd just like to say on behalf of Football South Australia, thanks for being so proactive and coming on board and giving our coaches who are listening in and watching this a trial membership to try and keep their players engaged. So thank you very much for that, because it's something that you've done and it's key for us moving forward to keep in touch with our players. And we'll share the details at the end of this, how they can access that. So my first question is, if someone's never used it before, how do they get started, and sort of what you mentioned it, but can you just reiterate what sort of support they have? So if they've never used it before, how do they go about it? Yeah, so like I said, huddle.com/support is going to be the best resource for that kind of stuff. But equally, once I set up everybody's accounts, and you'll all get a 4-week trial period. Once I set up the accounts, I'll send you through each of you an email, which will just basically outline the steps that I've gone through there.
I'll link you to the kind of 4 or 5 key articles that you need to do in order to add your team members so that they all have access. How do I upload video? How do I create my clips? And how do I add drawings and comments and that kind of stuff. I know it might have been a bit hard to follow along there. The video quality and the audio quality wasn't great. Apologies for that. We're all dealing with internet issues at the moment, so I wanted to record it ahead of time, but had to reduce the quality a little bit so that I could actually upload it in time for this presentation. But yeah, I'll provide you all with the resources necessary to get you up and running. Okay.
And I guess you deal with a number of clubs, regional sports organisation, national sporting bodies. Any of the clubs or sporting bodies that you deal with, how are they kind of using it at the moment to keep in touch with players in the 3 codes that you manage?
Yeah, so the majority of them are taking advantage of this time to do projects that potentially they've put on hold that they might not have had time or necessarily felt that they had time to do before. But what I'm really seeing now is that they're putting the onus on the players to do some self-driven analysis. That's something that a lot of teams actually do quite well, but a lot of teams don't do it at all. It's all coach-driven. I'm seeing a lot of teams now move towards the kind of self-driven player analysis model while they have the time to do so.
Okay. We've got a question from James. So I think he's talking about tagging games and coding games. So there's 2 ways. You can do it automatically or you can do it manually yourself. How long does it take? So if I send it off to be coded by somebody at Huddle, how long does that take? Or if I'm going to do it myself as the coach, how long will it take me to code a game and make the tags and make the videos?
So yeah, there's 2 ways that you can do it. You can just cut up the clips like I showed there, and that's not really tagging, but that could take you 90 minutes, or it could take you 2 hours depending on how much detail you're going into. It can actually take less time as well because you can play the video back in 2 times speed or a little bit faster than it normally would. And anytime you get to a key moment, you can just reduce that speed back down to do your tagging. So you can actually do a full game in probably an hour if you're not looking for too much detail. In terms of whether it works automatically in doing the tagging and stuff, we've got a service called Huddle Assist, which I didn't go into too much detail there, but I'll provide each of you with 1 Huddle Assist credit to get a game tagged by us. It's not automatic. We actually have a team of analysts that do it. And typically we will return those. We guarantee within 24 hours. It's usually a lot quicker than that. With these times and people having to work from home and that kind of stuff, I couldn't really give a guarantee at the moment, but it'll get done at some point as quickly as we can get around to it.
Yeah, and then if someone's starting to use it, how long do you think it would take a new coach to feel comfortable using it?
It's so easy to use. Once you've got the video online, and then you start pulling out some clips, adding comments and drawings. It's all really, really intuitive. There's nothing confusing or really overly technical about it. Our other product, Sports Code, which some of you may be familiar with, which is used by all of the professional teams more or less around the country. There is a fairly steep learning curve initially with that, but in terms of using huddle.com to share video with players online and create clips and drawings, you'll be up and running right away.
Okay. So what we'd like to do, if people have questions, if you can type in capitals questions into the chat, and then if you'd like to address it to myself, if you'd like to address it to Shane, or if you'd like to address it to Ben, we'll put them on screen and you can ask your question away, and then we can go from there. So yeah, type away. I think Matt, I think we had one from Jean that put in earlier that we didn't quite see. So I don't know whether you're allowed to ask Ben that question.
Yeah, sure. You can hear me okay?
Yep.
Cool. Let's stop here. So yeah, this is to Ben. Did you see evidence of players who knew what to do but consistently couldn't execute what they knew, which might contrast from players who didn't consistently know and also therefore couldn't execute? Gene said he'd imagine that finding the first type of player would be a strong warning sign. Was it used to literally assess players or just to improve?
So later it was used to assess players. So yeah, we developed a little bit of a model that we used for our academy players more than sort of first team players, to sort of assess those players and where they could potentially end up. So yeah, we did use it for that purpose, but it's harder with recruitment, because if we had players that we could bring in on trial, then yeah, absolutely, we could use it for those individuals. But predominantly we found that it was of most benefit for the sort of the youngsters coming through. And it was, yeah, not a key determining factor of whether or not they got contracts, but it definitely played a part and helped in the decision-making process.
Okay. Matt, got any questions from yourself?
Thanks. No, I guess I'd be really interested to hear from other coaches. Oh, Eleni, thank you for saving my bacon. Hi, Shane. When coding live, does the footage come from a Huddle connected camera, or do you import it from a coach's tool website such as Bar TV, etc.?
Well, we wouldn't do any live analysis on behalf of teams. That would come. You'd have to get that footage and upload it to Huddle, and then we would do the analysis after. Yeah, live setups are a trickier thing, and they kind of are on a case-by-case basis. You need different tools in order to be able to do live analysis, and we have those as well, but it's certainly a bit more technical, and you'd have to work with a provider like Bar TV in order to figure out the answer to that.
Is there a way, Shane, that when if you're recording off a camera on a scaffolding, that you can go directly into Huddle, or is that better if you're using sports code?
You'd use sports code for that. And we're building integration tools between Huddle and sports code at the moment. They're coming along really, really nicely. At the moment, the downloading from Huddle into sports code is working really well. The next phase of that is syncing from sports code back up to Huddle. But yeah, if you were on a scaffolding or something, you could use a sports code license to do some live review there and then.
Okay. Have we got any other questions for either Ben or Shane? Or if not, we'll outline how it'll work now to get their 4-week trial membership.
Yeah, sorry, Gene has just sent us a private question. I'm assuming a Huddle setup license would only be cost effective if a club used it rather than coach or one team. Would you say that's a fair assessment?
So we've got levels of, there's different levels of license that kind of suit all budgets. I mean, to an extent, but it's on a per team basis. So, you know, once you start getting into doing your stats and using Huddle Assist to tag video and that kind of stuff, it doesn't make sense to combine more than one team onto a single account, because the stats will just get muddied. So it's on a per team basis, and anybody who's interested in looking at this thereafter, then that'll be a discussion that I can have with them on an individual basis for sure. But there's many teams around the country and the world who just use Huddle for one team, maybe the first team, for example.
I've got a question actually for both Ben and Shane. What would your views be on the future of game analysis in the game? Where do you see the future heading, and if there's anything that you'd like to share with us? I guess, Ben, we'll start with you.
I think Shane might say the same, but I think there's a lot of new software coming out now that's sort of doing auto tagging and you know, a lot of AI enhancements. Obviously, you know, for the sort of grassroots game, that's some way off, but yeah, a lot of the stuff that I've been reading, a lot of the research I've been looking at is a lot more AI assisted tagging going to be coming in years to come, and hopefully that gets down to the grassroots level, because yeah, it makes life a lot easier. But yeah, for now, certainly the Huddle Assist is something that I use, and it works incredibly well for now. Yeah,
100%. I think that everything's going to be automated, so that'll include the filming process as well. So we already have these cameras that work indoors, and we're trialing them outdoors. But you'll have a camera that'll automatically record the game. It'll track the ball and the movement of the players. While that's happening, it'll be connected to the internet, so it'll be uploading. Perhaps there's an algorithm that can tag that game as well while that's happening. So basically, by the time the game has finished, the coach can log in online and all the players can, and the video will be there, and the data and everything will already be done right away afterwards. And I think that will be available to grassroots teams in a matter of a couple couple of years if I was to give my prediction. But yeah, that's the way it's going.
Okay. Just on that, obviously that's you're talking about the top of the game at the top of the professional leagues. But for a coach who's coaching maybe an under 17s or an under 18 team, what's the minimum sort of equipment that they need, and how do they set it up on a match day?
You just need a recording device. So you can use an iPad, for example. We don't necessarily recommend it because of the lack of zoom, but if times are tough and you don't have access to a camera, then you can. But any handheld camera, more or less, that records in HD, that'll do the job. You need a tripod just so that the video isn't too shaky. Sometimes we see video of people with handheld cameras, and that's just it's not good quality footage. But basically all you need is a camera and a tripod, and some elevation, essentially.
Okay. All right. If there's no more questions, what we'll do, we'll bring the workshop to a close. So just in terms, Shane, moving forward, what's the process that our coaches can get their free trial? So how will you manage that for them?
Yeah, just I'll get the email list off you, Alec, and everybody just keep an eye on your inbox. We should have the information in terms of who you are and what your team is. Keep an eye on your inbox, and you'll get an invitation to join Huddle. That'll come from us. And yeah, like I said, I'll send you all an email as well with the instructions on how to set up your account, to add your players, upload video, all those stuff that I covered today.
Okay, fantastic. So what we'll do, okay, so just a couple of things from me before we bring the workshop to a close. So we're going to look to, I said at the start, we're going to look to establish this as a weekly contact. So 6 p.m. on a Monday night. Apart from maybe Easter, we'll maybe put it onto the Tuesday night, and we'll bring a topic each week, and sometimes we'll invite guests in. They could be specialists in their field, or it could be local coaches who just give an oversight of what they do. So I've had a few people contact me asking about the continued development points. So we are looking at ways where coaches can attend the online website workshop here and qualify for points to go towards their 100-point total to make sure they reactivate their licensing. So we're looking at a way, because there'll have to be some pre-course tasks. So you'll have to log in. That we're trying to look for a way that we can upload some content that you can go and do a little bit of study prior to the video conference. You will then attend the video conference, and then there'd be a self-reflection piece afterwards. So I had a discussion with FFA last week about how we may be able to do that. So some of the workshops in the future, there might be a way that if people want to get their points, there's a way for you to be engaged, but it will take some learning in your own time, either side of the workshop, or for coaches that just want to come in and see the content, there'll be that option as well. So what we're going to do from here, we'll share the videos with you. We're going to post some of the video up onto our social media networks over the coming week, and we'll email it directly to you as well. So feel free to share it to the wider football community. So what I'll talk about next week's workshop. So at different workshops, we'll focus on different phases of development within our FFA system. So we're going to look at one next week, and we're going to look at for junior players, so especially those players that are aged sort of 9 to 13. And we know at the moment that their football contact is probably going to be in the back garden. And so we're going to look at one on the power of play, because if players can learn things through informal systems, the learning has been so more powerful. So we're going to look to create something about how we can use free play in this football downtime to really stimulate playing learning. And what we'll do is I've linked with a former colleague that I know that used to work at Plymouth Argyle in their academy program, and is currently studying a PhD in skill acquisition for primary school age children. So we'll bring him on, and we'll get him to share that how, in the time where it's about the player and the ball, how we can really engage that player to do some learning in their own time. Other than that, thank you for attending, and feel free to share. We'll announce and we'll put out later on this week about how to register for next week's workshop. So until then, stay at home and stay safe. And again, thank you to our two guest presenters tonight. It was very worthwhile and shows what we can do in this downtime. So I really appreciate your time. Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys.